Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, and where we give you a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And in today's episode, this topic, rather, is the real reason Kawhi Leonard will have the last laugh against Shannon Sharpe and Nick Wright. So before we get into that, I want you guys to please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. And hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Be sure to check out our Dreamerspro Podcast, which is linked in the description below. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media and Twitter and all of that stuff. We have all of that linked in the description below. So, let's get into the topic here. And I think it's going to be a pretty interesting topic because these guys seem to be connected together. Shannon Sharpe, Nick Wright, and Kawhi Leonard. And the reason they're connected is LeBron James. We all know this. But let's just talk about the history of Shannon Sharpe and Kawhi Leonard. Now, for some of you guys who don't know, Shannon Sharpe was a former American, professional football tight end. He won he won three Super Bowls, two with the Denver Broncos and one with the Baltimore Ravens. He's been an 8-time All-Pro bowler, and in 2011 he was inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So Shannon Sharpe is very accomplished. Now, on TV, Shannon Sharpe is hilarious. I think he's probably the funniest sports commentator out there. If we're just going to talk about humor, he is the funniest. It's not even close, right? He makes a lot of great points on social issues and other issues, but whenever it comes to Kawhi and LeBron and all this, he sort of loses me. But it's fine. That's my opinion. It's not going to change anything. He's still good at what he does. However, let's talk about the history of Shannon Sharpe and Kawhi Leonard. So let's talk about it. So y'all remember 2 seasons ago when Kawhi Leonard was playing with the Toronto Raptors, Skip Bayless was pretty salty that he was no longer a San Antonio Spurs, saying that he quit on the organization. He refused to stop playing. He refused to play, and he was faking his injury and all of these different things. And Shannon Sharpe was always coming to the defense of Kawhi Leonard. One probably was because he's a former athlete and people were accusing Kawhi Leonard of refusing not to play and lying about his body. And Shannon Sharpe took some exception to that and said, hey, listen, the guy's not faking his injury. The guy knows his body the best, and don't question whether or not he's healthy or not. So there's that possibility, right? There was probably some of that at play there where Shannon Sharpe didn't like the fact that people were questioning his integrity as an athlete. So there's that. But I remember when Kawhi Leonard was going to his playoff run with the Toronto Raptors, where he pretty much led the playoffs in points, rebounds, and steals, and had the highest scoring output behind Michael Jordan and LeBron James. And Shannon Sharpe was loving it. He was loving it. He was like, man, Skip, you see these virtuosos that Kawhi Leonard's putting out, Skip, you love it. Now, I'm sure a part of it was he liked the fact that Kawhi Leonard was rubbing it in the face of Skip Bayless. So for sure, Shannon Sharpe liked that aspect of what was going on, for sure. Then there was the other aspect of he was kind of salivating at the idea, knowing that Kawhi Leonard was most likely only going to be a 1-year rental with the Toronto Raptors. So he was probably saying to himself, man, this guy is good, and there's a good possibility that the Lakers may get him, given the fact that the rumors were at the end of the season, Kawhi Leonard wanted to go play in LA. So that's what they heard. And obviously at the point we knew it was either going to be the Lakers or the Clippers, but Shannon Sharpe was leaning towards the Lakers given the fact that his favorite player plays with the Lakers. And he just thought that, hey, listen, this guy, we could probably possibly have him. And when the offseason was over, Shannon Sharpe was pretty certain that Kawhi Leonard was going to go to the Lakers, but he eventually went to the Clippers, which he was disappointed about, which he said on TV. However, once people started saying that whispers were going around that, hey, listen, is this dude the best player in the world? That's when him and Kawhi Leonard started having his fallout, because then it was like, wait a minute. Now they're talking about he's better than LeBron, and then that's when things started to go awry with him because he was starting to feel threatened. Now, let's talk about Nick Wright. Nick Wright, on the other hand, was completely different. Nick Wright, when Kawhi Leonard was going through his run in the playoffs with the Raptors, he was giving him his props. But he wasn't really throwing it out there like Shannon Sharpe, because Nick Wright, in his mind, the only player he can really give props to a player But when you start seeing that other people are starting to give props to this guy and no one is talking about LeBron, all of a sudden he feels threatened. And what happened? When Kawhi Leonard won his championship, he was happy for him. He was, he congratulated him. But this season, when he saw that Kawhi Leonard went to the Clippers and made it clear that he was going to be a direct competitor, or an opponent or a nemesis to LeBron, Nick Wright picked sides immediately. All of a sudden, he was going at Kawhi Leonard all season long, right? And I think he had him ranked like probably the 5th or 6th best player in the NBA. I don't know what he ranked. I don't know what he had him ranked, right? And he was saying some crazy things all throughout the season. I remember the Christmas Day game. We did a video on that a year ago. We'll probably link that in the description below, where Pat Beverly knocked the ball out of LeBron James' hand, went off his fingertips, and it was Clippers ball. And then Nick Wright came out the next day and said it should have never been Clippers ball. So that's Nick Wright for you. And we did a video on that. We'll probably link that in the description below so you guys can definitely check that out. Hear Nick Wright spewing his nonsense on that particular issue. But however, Nick Wright predicted that, listen, the Clippers have some internal issues. Now, maybe some of us were overlooking it because we thought they were so good. They were favorites. But he said, listen, they could possibly lose to the Denver Nuggets when he did his playoff seeding. And what happened? Playoffs started. They beat the Dallas Mavericks, right? They beat them in 6 games. And then they went into the second series. And then the Clippers that were up 3-1 ended up blowing that lead. And then once they blew that lead, the avalanche came down from Nick Wright and Shannon Sharpe. Now, granted, Nick Wright, to be fair to him, he picked the Clippers to lose that series. So to be fair to him, he was right. Shannon Sharpe didn't. Even the game, the show before the Game 7, he picked the Clippers to win that game. But man, when they lost, he went off. And if you go look at the video on YouTube, that video has well over 1 million views. Now, some of y'all are saying, but how, after all of this, will Kawhi Leonard have the last laugh against these two guys? Well, first of all, I think Kawhi Leonard is going to be motivated because a glaring weakness in his game has been exposed, which is his leadership. A lot of people are questioning his leadership. No one is going to question his basketball game. Granted, he did have a 12-point game, but it's going to be pretty hard to see Kawhi Leonard score another 12-point game in his playoff career. Ever, unless he plays like 12 minutes in a game or so. So I think Kawhi Leonard is going to come back motivated to prove a lot of people wrong, number one. Number two, the coach that they have in Tyronn Lue, I think he's going to want to prove his worth to the organization, given the fact that they picked him. They chose him to be the next head coach, letting go of Doc Rivers. So I think he's going to want to prove that, listen, I'm not going to make the same mistakes that my predecessor did. Given the fact that Tyronn Lue was there, he saw the ship go down. Hell, he was on the ship. He probably grabbed a life raft in one of the last boats before the thing went under, in the water. But he saw all of the things that led to that team's demise because he had a front row seat. He was one of the assistant coaches on the team. So Tyronn Lue is going to be motivated to not make the same mistake again. But one of the biggest reasons I believe that Kawhi Leonard and these boys will have the last laugh is if they're able to pick up a solid traditional point guard in probably Holiday or Rondo, one of these guys, and to pick up a very good defensive big. I'm not saying they can get Serge Ibaka because he's very expensive unless they let go of Montrezl Harrell and so I don't know, right? But if they're able to get these two things and the roster stays the same, right, I think they're going to have the last laugh because the thing with the Clippers was they didn't get enough reps. Right? They didn't practice enough together because the team was not healthy for the majority of the season. I don't think they played more than 20, 30 games together an entire season. So they didn't have enough reps together. That's number one. Number two, I think Paul George will probably get his act together this season. I don't think he's going to come back and lay an egg again. I mean, it's possible, but whatever happens with Paul George, I don't think that's going to hold him back. I think if they shore up some of the other issues that they had, because they could have overcome the Nuggets, given the fact that Paul George was pedestrian. He was only averaging 20 points or 21 points for the playoffs. Pretty much what he was averaging for the regular season. And they still had the number 2 record in the Western Conference with all of the craziness, all of the injuries with the Clippers. They still were the number 2 seed in the West, which is crazy to think about, right? And given the fact that this is not going to be a traditional playoffs where we're going to be in a bubble and there's going to be all of these unusual circumstances, I think that the Clippers are going to have a bounce back season, given the fact that this is going to be a traditional 72-game season. And in the end, because of all of those things I just mentioned, I think Kawhi Leonard will have the last laugh against Shannon Sharpe and these guys. Now, I'm not saying that, hey, listen, the Clippers are going to win the title, but I'm definitely saying that you're not going to see anything about Kawhi Leonard flaming out of the playoffs or scoring 12 points in the playoffs again. That's not going to happen, right? I don't think that's going to happen. But of course, these are my opinions. So what I want to know from you guys is quite simple. What do you guys think about all of the things that I said in this video? Do you think that Kawhi Leonard is going to have last laugh? Or do you think, hey, listen, it's a wrap for the guy and it's a wrap for the Clippers? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. Again, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever we drop our content. Once again, this is Charles here from Dreamerspro, wishing you guys an amazing day. Peace.